Hello, IBAN fans. It's Jennifer with Diamond NestEgg. As some of you know, I recently set up a revocable living trust with Quicken Willmaker so that I could buy another $10,000 of IBANs. Many of you have asked how I did this. So, in today's video, I'm going to walk you through what a revocable living trust is, how I created a simple revocable living trust for my IBANs with Quicken Willmaker, step by step, as always, and what I needed to do with my trust document after it was notarized and official. On the most basic level, a revocable living trust is a written document that determines how your assets will be dealt with after you die, whom they'll go to. It keeps your assets out of probate, a court-supervised process that can be both lengthy and costly for your loved ones after you pass away. Assets that are typically included in a revocable living trust may include real estate, valuable possessions, bank accounts, and investments. For my purpose and the purpose of this video, I created a revocable living trust for the sole purpose of buying IBANs right now. This trust will not include real estate, valuable possessions, or anything of the sort, at least not for a while. And that is the beauty of my revocable living trust. The term revocable refers to the fact that I can access what's in it, change it, or even get rid of it completely at any time. I control everything that happens with my revocable living trust, so long as I'm of sound mind and body living on this earth. Accessing what's in my trust. If I decide at some later date that I want to sell the IBANs in my trust after the minimum 12-month holding period, I can do that. If I decide that I want to buy more IBANs with my trust next year or the year after that, I can do that as well. Changing my trust. If I decide at some later date that my trust shouldn't just hold IBANs, I can add in anything else I want. My house, my books, my Spider-Man cookie cutters. I can also remove anything I want. I can change my successor trustee. More on who that is later. I can change my trust beneficiaries. You get the picture. Closing my trust. If I decide at some later date that I don't need or want this trust anymore, I simply transfer all the assets out of it back into my own name, and that's it. The exact laws that govern revocable living trusts and trusts in general vary by state. And here are a few things to keep in mind. A revocable living trust typically does not replace a will. It will not protect your assets from creditors, and it will not provide Medicaid asset protection. Revocable living trusts deserve a video of their own. So if you want to learn more about them, my financial friends, drop me a comment below. As you know, I'm not a lawyer nor your advisor, but I'll see which lawyer friend I can bring onto the channel to talk more about this. For now, let's focus on how I created a revocable living trust with Quicken to buy more IBANs. I use Nolo's Quicken Willmaker because I've had good experiences with them in the past with drafting wills. And I went for the Plus version because the starter one doesn't include living trusts. If you're not in a rush to get this done though, you should know that Nolo typically runs deals around major holidays. So you can always check them out around Memorial Day, July 4th, Labor Day, or the like to see what offers they have on the Quicken Willmaker at that time. Once you've purchased, downloaded, and installed the program, open it up. Here's the screen that'll show up. I'm going to click on Start next to Living Trust. This is what appears next. Here on the left, there's a brief description about living trusts and their purpose. As it states, living trusts let you decide who will get your property while keeping that property from going through probate, which can be costly and lengthy, as I mentioned earlier in the video. Below that, there's even more detail. And on the right-hand side, you'll see this helpful information section. So if I click on who may use this trust, I'll get this explanation that I have to be 18 years old and of sound mind and body to make this trust, which I still am for the time being. It also tells me that this software is designed for most US citizens and permanent residents, even US residents that are living abroad. But for whatever reason, it's not for residents of Louisiana or the American territories. So if this is you, sorry. Every screen has a helpful information section that explains things a bit further. And I did find the helpful information very helpful. So if you're unsure of anything at any point, be sure to check out what's written here. I'm going to click on Next to get started. Here, I'll select my state of legal residence, New York. Again, this helpful information section on the right-hand side will help answer any questions you might have about your state of legal residence, if you live in more than one state, or if you live outside of the US. It will help you figure out how you should go about choosing the appropriate state or whether you need to call a lawyer instead of DIYing this with the software. Our state of legal residence is pretty clear, so I'll click Next now. I'm going to click on Individual Living Trust, a living trust that's just for me. For those of you who are wondering why I'm not setting up a shared living trust with my husband Marcus, it's because I want to leave the option open for him to set up his own revocable living trust later on. For him only. For example, in case he wants to put his map collection in there in the future, or if he wants to buy more I-bonds for himself. Now I'll click Next, and it'll take me to this page which shows the 3 essential steps that I need to take to create my living trust. First, I have to create the trust document called a declaration of trust. This part here will be important when you open your trust account with Treasury Direct. Then I have to sign the trust document in front of a notary public. And finally, I have to transfer property into my name as the trustee. I'll click Next. What pops up afterwards is this checklist that shows the 8 different items or sections that I need to complete. Again, if you ever need more guidance on any of the sections or pages, refer to this helpful information section on the right-hand side. I'm just going to get started, so I'll click Next. I'm going to enter my name here, my gender, and my marital status. Then I'll click Next. And I'll be taken back to the checklist. This check mark here means that I've just completed section 1, my name. The green dot indicates the next unfinished section of the checklist that I'm moving on to. This is what I have to complete now, section 2, trustees. If I click on the what each section does here, under helpful information on the right-hand side, it'll give me more details about each section on the checklist. The first section, your name, I just completed. As it states here, my name will appear in the title of the trust document. I'm the grantor and the trustee of my trust. Basically, I'm the one that controls my trust and I'm the one that benefits from it while I'm alive. This second section, trustees, that I'm about to complete refers to who I want to take over as trustee of my trust after I die or am incapacitated. I'm going to click on Next to keep moving forward. Here, you'll see the explanation that every living trust must have a trustee, and that this trustee holds the title to trust property and manages that property. The property, in this case, when I get started with my trust, will be my I-bonds essentially. So as it states here, during my lifetime, I will be the trustee of my living trust. I will have complete control over the trust property, meaning I'll have 100% control over any I-bonds held as property in this living trust of mine. The most important reason for this has to do with taxes, as explained here on the right-hand side under the helpful information section again. As the trustee, I am known as the grantor of the trust, the creator of the trust. And as long as I'm the trustee, my trust is not a separate taxable entity, meaning that any income earned from property held in my trust, any interest earned on my I-bonds in this trust can simply be reported on my personal income tax return upon redemption. As it points out here, I don't have to file a separate return for my trust. You can click on this link here for more information on this topic. I'm good to go, so I'm going to click next. Now, I'm going to name a successor trustee, someone who will take over for me as trustee if I die or become incapacitated. This successor trustee will be in charge of distributing my trust property, my I-bonds, to my beneficiaries when the time comes. As it states here, I should choose someone I trust to handle my affairs honestly and competently. The person doesn't have to be a Nobel Prize winner, but they also shouldn't be someone afraid of dealing with numbers, with finances, and so on. So really think hard about who your successor trustee should be. And as always, you can read through the details under the helpful information section on the right-hand side if you need more information. I'm going to click next. And here, I'm going to enter my husband's name as the successor trustee. I only have one successor trustee because I want to keep things as simple and easy as possible. But you can name multiple successor trustees if you want. As the directions indicate, if you want to do this, just press enter after each name you enter so that each name appears on a separate line. If you do choose multiple successors, you'll be taken to the screen where you have to select whether your successor trustees must agree on everything they do or whether they can act independently. Once you've chosen, click next and follow the prompts. I'm going to click back because I only have one successor trustee, my husband Marcus. This takes me back to this Name Your Successor Trustee page. After I enter Marcus's name in this box, I'll click next. Here, I can choose an alternate successor trustee in case Marcus can't serve as my trustee for whatever reason. As before, I can name more than one alternate successor trustee, or I can choose not to name an alternate. For example, if I don't have anyone I can trust to do this job. And again, more information on the alternate successor trustee is available on the right-hand side in this helpful information section. I'm going to enter my sister as the alternate successor trustee and then click next. Read the next page carefully. It essentially states that if someday I become unable to handle my affairs on my own, this trust document gives my successor trustee, in my case, my husband Marcus, the authority to begin serving as trustee, to take over my living trust, basically. But who decides if I'm no longer able to handle my own affairs? That's what I have to figure out here. And I can name up to 3 people, my first choice and 2 alternates. The alternates are optional. Click on the right-hand side here. Yes, again, the helpful information section to learn more about this. And in particular, if you click on choosing people to make the decision, you'll see that it's advised that you choose people whom you trust and who will be around for years to come. And more specifically, you should choose someone who is not your successor trustee. So in my case, I would not choose Marcus here because he should not be the one deciding whether or not I'm capable of managing my own affairs when he's the person who will be the one replacing me in this capacity. That would be a conflict of interest. The program will, in fact, not allow me to do this. I ended up choosing my doctor as my first choice and 2 very close friends as my alternates. When I'm done, I'll click next. I've now completed section 2, trustees, on the checklist. So I'm going to move on to section 3, the property that will be held in my trust. I'm going to click next to keep going. The next screen tells me that I should first create an inventory of my major property, meaning a written list of the things that I own, that I want to be transferred into my trust. This is done to ensure that I don't miss anything later on. Here on the right-hand side, under the helpful information section, there's a list of items that folks typically include in a trust. I'm simply going to click next because there's really nothing significant to transfer into this trust right now. I'm opening it for the sole purpose of buying I-bonds. I-bonds that I can't buy yet until I'm done setting up this trust. The following screen tells me I'm going to now actually start the process of listing the property that I'm going to transfer into the trust. As always, on the right-hand side, under the helpful information section, if you click on any of these, you can now find even more details on each of these items that folks might generally transfer into a trust. I'm just going to click on real estate as an example, and you can see the additional information here. I'm going to hit next at this point. On the screen that pops up now, I'm supposed to start describing the first item that I want to move into the trust. Down here are some do's and don'ts about the language I should use when describing the item. You can read through these details when you get here. Now, again, I'm setting up this trust to buy I-bonds, but I don't actually own them yet because I have to set up this trust first, then open my trust account with Treasury Direct, and then buy my I-bonds for the trust. So really, there is nothing to transfer into the trust right now. However, if I leave this box empty, if I don't list something and just click next, here's the error message I get. I have to list something here. Otherwise, I can't set up this trust. So what I'm going to do is enter Jennifer Lammer's trust binder. This actually works out really well because I do want to have a binder to keep all the trust documents in. And on the right-hand side, if I click on miscellaneous items, there's more detail on how I should describe the binder that I listed here. You'll see from these examples that I need to add an address for my binder so they'll know where to find it when I die. For illustration purposes, I'm just going to enter 33 Liberty Street, New York, New York, as the address where my binder is held. You should enter whatever address you'll be keeping your trust binder at, assuming you choose a trust binder. You can choose something completely different if you want. I'm going to hit next now, and the screen that appears confirms that I've listed my trust binder as part of this trust. I'm not adding anything else, so I'm going to hit next. On the following screen, there will be an explanation that I need to prepare transfer documents that will assign ownership of all the property that I listed on the previous screen. Meaning that if I were transferring into this trust, things like real estate, vehicles, a business ownership interest like one in Diamond NestEgg, for example, things that have a title document, think of it as an ownership document. If this were the case, I would have to prepare transfer documents that will assign ownership of these items to the trust because they now belong to the trust, not to me. And that's why I chose a trust binder. First, because I want to have a hard copy of all my trust documents. And second, because things like books don't have title documents, which makes the setup process easier. As always, there's a more detailed explanation on the right-hand side that you should familiarize yourself with. I'm going to click next to keep going. Here, they ask me if my trust binder has a title document. I'm going to click on the trust binder first, and then there'll be the option to choose title document or no title document. I'm going with no title document because as I mentioned earlier, and as you can see here, books, which is what I consider my trust binder to be, do not have title documents. What will happen at the end, as detailed here, is that the program will list out my trust binder and any item without a title document that's being held in this trust. There's nothing else in this case, but if there were, everything without a title document would be listed in my assignment of property, which in legal speak basically means that these items will now be transferred to me as the trustee of this trust. Click next to keep going. I'm back at this checklist again. Section 3, property to be held in trust, is completed. So I'm going to move on to section 4, beneficiaries of the trust. I'll click next. The screen that shows up tells me that it's time for me to name the beneficiaries who will inherit the trust property, basically my trust binder, when I die. I'll get to how to add those I-bonds that I'll be buying for this trust into this trust document later on. This is the very last step. I can't do it until this trust is set up and I've opened my account with Treasury Direct. I'll click on next now. And on the screen that appears, I'm going to opt for all my trust property going to one or more beneficiaries because I want to keep things as simple as possible. Again, there's more information on the right-hand side on beneficiaries if you want to learn more. Then I'll click Next. Now I'm going to name my beneficiary. I'll enter Marcus's name here. So yes, Marcus is my beneficiary as well as my successor trustee. Take note of this message down below that says if you don't leave at least half of your property to your spouse or domestic partner, that person may have a right to claim more of your property. You can click on this link to read more about this topic, as well as the helpful information section on the right-hand side. As always, I'm just going to click Next because this doesn't apply to me. On the next screen, I'm asked if I want to choose alternate beneficiaries. In case Marcus dies before me, my alternate beneficiaries will receive my trust property. So my trust binder and eventually those I-bonds that I will buy in this trust. You don't have to name an alternate beneficiary. You can read more about that here, but I want to, so I'll click yes and then next. Here, I'm going to name my 4 children as alternate beneficiaries. As always, the helpful information section will provide more details. Then I'll click next. I'm going to select equal shares, meaning each of my 4 kids gets an equal share of what's in the trust, because we're fair like that in this family. And I'll click next. Here, I'll have to review the beneficiary information as it will appear in the trust document. So, my husband will be given everything I own in my trust. And if he does not survive me, my children will be given everything in equal shares. If you want to change this, then click on Change, or you can delete it altogether and start over. Now, the one thing you should note here, this is how the program writes the document. While my 4 children will be given everything in equal shares if Marcus does not survive me, if one of my children were to die, which would be devastating, but I need to make sure you understand this. If one of my children were to die, what's in the trust would be divided amongst the 3 surviving children only. It would not be given to the heirs of my dead 4th child. My children are still relatively young. I don't expect any grandchildren for another 15 or 20 years, hopefully. So it doesn't really matter in my case. But if this matters to you, this is the part you should consult with a lawyer on to make the appropriate change. I'm good to go, so I'll click Next. This takes me back to the checklist screen. I just completed Section 4, Beneficiaries of Trust. You see the check mark. Section 5, the Residuary Beneficiary section, is grayed out. That's because it doesn't apply in my situation. And if you're creating the trust in the exact same manner that I'm doing it, it won't apply to you either. If I click on this what each section does here, it explains why. As it states here, the residuary beneficiary receives any trust property that doesn't go to a beneficiary that I specifically named in Section 4. And as it further stipulates, I've already stated who will inherit my trust property in Section 4. So Section 5 is not necessary. That's why it's grayed out. So I'll move on to Section 6, Property Management for Beneficiaries, and click Next. This section is important because my children are minors, and I've named my children as alternate beneficiaries in case my husband, my primary beneficiary, dies before me. As the program advises here, if I'm leaving trust property to young beneficiaries, it's strongly recommended that I arrange for someone to manage the trust property they might inherit. I highly recommend reading through everything here before you proceed with your trust document, so you're certain about what to do next. This section references beneficiaries who are minors, so anyone under 18 years old. This section below it references beneficiaries who are young adults, typically anyone between the ages of 18 and 35. I've read through everything, so I'll hit Next. On the next screen, I'm asked whether any of my beneficiaries are under age 35. Parents who have children with special needs, please read this section here. It's advised that you not use the program for management of your child's property. So as you see here, if I click no, I'm essentially done with this section and will be taken back to the checklist. In my case though, I'm going to click yes because I've named my children as alternate beneficiaries. And then next. The following screen shows the different property management options. I can either name a custodian to manage the property until my children turn 21. That's the age that custodianship ends in New York. In your state, it might be different. As always, you can read more about this topic on the right-hand side. The other option I have is to set up a child subtrust, which would hold my trust property until my children turn a specific age. It seems the maximum threshold is 35 years old. I went with the custodian option because I feel that my children, with all the personal finance conversations that go on in our household, they should be ready to deal with this trust, I-bonds, and whatever else might be in it by the time they're 21. Your situation might be different though, so be sure to read through this helpful information section on the right-hand side or consult with your lawyer or advisor if you need help figuring out what's best for your circumstances. I'm going to click next to keep going. And on the next page, I'm going to have to choose between a subtrust or custodianship for each child. I'll select my first alternate beneficiary, the first child who is under 18, then click on UTMA custodianship and next. On the following page, I'll enter the name of my child's custodian. My child's custodian, as you can see from the helpful information section, is the adult that will manage and spend the property for the benefit of this child until he or she turns 21. As I mentioned earlier, that's the age that custodianship ends in New York. In your state, it may be different. Below this, there's more information on choosing and naming a child's custodian. Here, I'm also going to enter the name of my child's alternate custodian in case my first choice is not available. As you can see, this is optional. Then I'll hit next. This will take me back to the original setup child subtrust or custodianship page. You'll see that next to the first child, there's now this custodianship designation. If I want to change this, I'll just click on that first child's name again and select one of these options down here. Everything is good though, so now I'll select my second alternate beneficiary, the second child who's under 18, whom I've named as the alternate beneficiary. Click UTMA custodianship and next. Basically, I'm going to repeat the same process that I just went through with my first child for the rest of my children. And when I'm done, you see here that all of them now have custodianship at the end of their names. I'll click next. At this point, I'll be taken back to my checklist. I've completed Section 6, Property Management for Beneficiaries. Now, I'm going to move on to Section 7, Wrap Up. I'll click next. Here, I'm told that I've finally entered all of the information needed to complete my trust document, and I'm almost done. Thank goodness. I just have to add contact details for everyone that I've named in my trust. Then I'll have to review everything for accuracy, sign the document in front of a notary public, and transfer my trust binder into the trust. I'll click next. This screen will now appear, and I'll have to click on every person that I included in the trust document and then add their information. So if I click on my name, you'll see this box shows up, as well as the information that needs to be completed. Try to fill it out as much as you can for each person named in your trust. I'll click next when I've completed this for everyone. At this point, I'll be taken back to my checklist, where you'll see I've completed Section 7, Wrap Up, and now I'm moving on to Section 8, the Summary. I'll hit next. I'm going to carefully review everything here on the Summary of Trust document screen. And down here as well. The information has to be correct because that's what will be going into my actual trust document. If anything is wrong, I'd click on the back button to make corrections. But for me, it's ready to go. So I'll click next. And here's the checklist screen that appears afterwards. I've completed all 8 sections. And now I'm ready to preview and print my trust document. I'll hit next. This box will now appear asking me which documents I want to see. I'm going to leave everything checked because I want to see everything. And then I'll click OK. And what will appear next is a screen like this with all the documents that I need to read through. The first pages are the instructions, which will tell me, amongst other things, what to do before I sign, including reading through everything and getting the trust document notarized. This part is very important. My trust is not valid until my trust document, my declaration of trust, is notarized. Also note this part when I scroll down. I have to sign the property schedule and the assignment of property. However, these two documents do not need to be notarized. I'll show you what these look like shortly. The next part will talk about making copies of my trust and registering my trust. As it points out here, some states will require that I register my living trust document with the local court. New York does not, so I'm good on this front. You should see what the applicable rules are in your state. And below that is a note about storing my trust documents. Good thing I have that trust binder listed as trust property. And if I keep scrolling down, I'll see my actual trust document. It will say Declaration of Trust, like this on the top. I'm going to read through all of this carefully to make sure everything is correct. And if I keep scrolling until the end of the Declaration of Trust document, I'll get to this part where it says Certification of Grantor. This is where I'll have to sign and date in front of the notary public, and below that is where the notary public will put their official stamp and signature. Below that is the property schedule that I have to sign and date. It says Schedule A on the top and shows the property that I will place in this trust. This trust binder located at 33 Liberty Street, New York, New York. Keep in mind, I just have to sign and date this Schedule A. I don't need it notarized. Remember this Schedule A. I'm going to come back to it after the trust document is notarized and I've opened my trust account with Treasury Direct. If I keep scrolling now, there's this assignment of property page. I have to fill out the month and date, and here the year. Here again, the month and date, and here the year. I'll fill in the city and state here, and then again, the month, date, and the year. And then I'll sign here. No need to notarize this either. Then I'll read through the rest of the paperwork to make sure that I understand everything. You should do the same on your trust documents. When I'm done, I'll click on Save PDF to save it to my computer and click Next. And here's the congratulations page that I've been waiting for from the program. I'm finally done. As I'm reminded here, I still need to sign my declaration of trust and get it notarized. I'll also complete and sign the property schedule, the Schedule A, as well as the assignment of property page. And if you have any questions at all, click on this Find a Lawyer button. I'm just going to click Done. And afterwards, I printed out my trust documents, grabbed my driver's license, and went to my bank to get my declaration of trust signed in front of the notary public and notarized by him. So once my trust documents are signed and notarized, I'm ready to set up my trust account with Treasury Direct and buy my first I-bonds in my trust account. This video will walk you through how to do that when you're ready for this, step by step as always. After I've set up my trust account with Treasury Direct, I'm going to go back to Schedule A of my trust document. Between the number 1 here and the signature section, I'm going to write down by hand. 2, Treasury Direct account number, where this blank here is the Treasury Direct account number for my trust, the one I use for my Treasury Direct login. I also signed and dated this change right at the end of the line where I entered my Treasury Direct account number, just to be certain. And now I'm really done with these trust documents for my I-bonds. Keep in mind that I'm not a lawyer. I'm simply sharing with you our story, what I did, and what I felt was right for our family circumstances. My plan is to keep this revocable living trust for quite some time. Initially, it will just hold I-bonds, but further down the line, it may serve other purposes. If you're thinking of setting up a trust just to buy more I-bonds in the short term, I'm not sure it's necessarily worth the time, effort, and cost. You will need to buy the software. And for me, I also had a lawyer review my final documents for accuracy. As our trademark saying goes, everyone's financial journey is different. So do consult with your advisor and lawyer if you have any questions specific to your situation. As always, Super Savers, I hope this video will help you add some more I-bonds to your personal portfolio, like it helped us. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget that thumbs up, and see you again next week with another money-saving, wealth-building video.